Jake Martinez stood in the entrance hall of Zenith Academy and felt completely out of place. The building was huge, with tall silver walls and ceilings that showed moving star maps. Students from different planets walked past him. Some had blue skin, some floated in the air, some had tails or extra arms. Jake had never seen anything like it in his life. He was the first human student at this school. Earth had only joined the group of space-traveling planets 15 years ago. Not many humans got the chance to study with aliens. Jake's parents were very proud of him. But right now, Jake just felt nervous and alone. A tall alien with golden skin walked up to him. The alien had big dark eyes and only 3 fingers on each hand. A small device behind Jake's ear translated the alien's words into English. "You must be the human," the alien said. "I am Kelvin. I come from a planet called Cythera Prime. I will show you around the school today." Jake shook Kelvin's hand. Kelvin seemed very careful, like he thought Jake might break. "Nice to meet you. I'm Jake." "I must say, this is very unusual," Kelvin said as they walked. "You are the first student from a Class 12 Deathworld. It is surprising that you survived the trip here." "Deathworld? What does that mean?" Jake asked. Kelvin looked surprised. "You do not know? A Class 12 world is one of the most dangerous places in the galaxy. Life there is a constant battle to survive. Most civilized species come from Class 1 to 4 worlds. My planet is Class 2. It is safe and stable with very few dangers." "Oh," Jake said. "I guess Earth has some rough places." "Rough?" Kelvin tilted his head. "The reports say your world is barely livable. Come, let me show you to your room." As they walked, Jake noticed other students staring at him. Some took out devices to look up information about humans. He felt like an animal in a zoo. His room was small but nice. It had a window that looked out at space. Kelvin helped him set up his schedule and explained where to find food. "The food machines have been programmed with your dietary needs," Kelvin said. "But I must warn you. Some students may be upset by your carnivorous nature." "Carnivorous? I eat vegetables too," Jake said. "Yes, but you eat meat. Most civilized species stopped eating animals long ago. It is considered primitive." Kelvin paused. "I mean no offense." After Kelvin left, Jake sat on his bed and looked at the stars. He was representing all of humanity here. No pressure at all, he thought. The next morning, Jake went to his first class. It was called Introduction to Galactic Biology. The classroom had rows of seats made for different body types. Jake found a spot in the middle. The professor was a being that looked like a walking porcupine with soft fur. She had intelligent amber eyes. "Good morning, students. I am Professor Lyra Quinn. Today we will discuss what life needs to exist." She showed them a hologram of different planets. Complex life needs specific conditions. Stable temperatures, water, breathable air, and protection from radiation. Most homeworlds in the galaxy have these comfortable conditions. A student near the front raised a tentacle. "Professor, what about the humans' homeworld? I read that it is classified as a death world." Everyone looked at Jake. His face felt hot. "Ah, yes," Professor Quinn said. "An excellent topic. Mr. Martinez, would you mind sharing some information about Earth?" Jake stood up slowly. "Sure, what do you want to know?" "Perhaps you could describe a normal day on Earth," the professor suggested. "Okay, well, I grew up in Colorado. I would wake up, go to school, hang out with friends, do homework. Normal stuff." A student made of crystal chimed softly. "But what about the dangers? Reports say Earth has extreme weather, earthquakes, and large predators." "You mean like thunderstorms and earthquakes? And wild animals?" Jake blinked. "Those exist, yeah. Thunderstorms? What are those?" Another student asked. Jake was confused. "They happen when water vapor creates electrical discharges. Lightning. It rains, sometimes with ice falling from the sky. And there's thunder, which is the sound from the lightning." The classroom erupted in shocked whispers. The blob-like student shook visibly. "Ice falls from your sky? And electrical discharges happen naturally in your atmosphere?" "Yeah, all the time. Especially in summer." "It's pretty normal," Jake said. Professor Quinn's quill stood up. "And these thunderstorms? Are they dangerous?" "They can be. People get hit by lightning sometimes. And if you're outside in a bad storm, you can get too cold from the rain. But mostly people just go inside and wait." "Remarkable," the professor whispered. "And you mentioned earthquakes?" "Right, Earth's crust is made of plates that move around. Sometimes they grind together and the ground shakes. It can knock down buildings." A student with blue scales hissed softly. "The scales turned orange. Your ground moves without warning?" How do you build anything? Engineering, Jake said with a shrug. In places with lots of earthquakes, buildings are designed to bend and sway. The rest of the class was just questions about Earth. Jake described volcanoes, hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, and blizzards. Each thing he mentioned seemed to scare his classmates more. When he said Earth's air was 21% oxygen, several students gasped. That is almost twice the normal amount, Professor Quinn said. Her voice was full of fascination. Such high oxygen would be toxic to most species, and it must make your world very flammable. I guess we have wildfires sometimes, but the oxygen is normal for us. By the time class ended, Jake felt tired. He had never thought of Earth as dangerous. It was just home. But seeing everyone's reactions made him think that maybe humans had adapted to things that would kill most other species. At lunch, Jake sat with Kelvin and a few other students. A female alien with blue-green scales leaned forward. Her name was Kira. Is it true that Earth has creatures big enough to kill humans? She asked. Well, yeah. Bears, lions, crocodiles, sharks. But they mostly avoid people. You're more likely to die in a car accident. Car accident? Kelvin asked. When vehicles crash, humans use ground vehicles for transportation. They can go over 100 miles per hour. The table went quiet. A small rabbit-like alien named Pip spoke with a shaking voice. You travel at such high speeds? Near other vehicles? Every day. It's called a highway. That sounds terrifying, Kira said. Her scales rippled. Jake bit into his synthetic burger. It didn't taste quite right. It's really not that bad once you get used to it. You were trusted with a high-speed vehicle as a child? Kelvin's golden skin had turned pale. I started driving at 16. That's normal back home. Over the next few days, Jake's reputation spread through the school. Students who had avoided him now wanted to talk to him. They were curious about the Deathworld human. He told stories about camping trips where he had to watch for snakes and spiders, about hiking in mountains where the air was thin, about swimming in the ocean with jellyfish and dangerous currents. Each story was met with horror and fascination. The other students could not understand a world where danger was just part of life, where children played outside despite stinging insects, where people ate food that could have bacteria if not cooked properly. But Jake also started to understand something. His classmates were not weak or naive. They were brilliant, curious, and kind. They had just evolved in different places, and now they were all learning from each other. That night, Jake lay in his bed and looked at the alien stars. He smiled. Maybe being from a death world was not such a bad thing. It certainly made him interesting. He thought about his family back on Earth. His mom and dad would want to know everything. His younger sister Carmen would ask a million questions. He made a mental note to record a message for them tomorrow. For now, though, he was just tired. His first day at Zenith Academy had been exhausting and strange and wonderful all at once. Tomorrow there would be more classes, more questions, and more opportunities to show his classmates that humans were not so scary after all. Jake closed his eyes and drifted off to sleep, dreaming of thunderstorms and alien friends under strange stars. Jake's second week at Zenith Academy brought new surprises. This morning he had advanced physical sciences class. The professor was named Court. He was a massive being whose body looked like walking rocks. His voice sounded like distant thunder. Today we will discuss gravity and how it affects biological development, Professor Court announced. His rocky hand activated a display showing different planets. Each species here evolved under different gravity. This shaped your bodies in basic ways. The display showed various planets with numbers beside them. Most civilized species evolved on worlds with gravity between 0.6 and 1.1 standard units. These comfortable ranges allowed complex brains to develop without needing too much structural support. A crystal student named Denna asked a question. Professor, what about worlds with higher gravity? Would complex life be impossible there? Not impossible, but very unlikely, Professor Court replied. The energy needed for movement and the stress on biological systems make high-gravity worlds hostile to most sentient life. He tapped the control, and Earth appeared on the display. Jake noticed the number beside it said 1.0 standard units. The classroom went silent. Professor Court looked surprised. Interesting. It appears Earth's gravity is used as the baseline standard measurement. Mr. Martinez, did you know this? Jake shook his head. No, sir. I thought the standard was based on an average or something. When Earth joined the galactic community, the Science Council studied your homeworld extensively. They discovered that Earth's gravity was very close to the theoretical maximum for developing advanced life. They adopted it as the standard unit. This means, Mr. Martinez, that you have lived your entire life in what most species would consider crushing gravity. Whispers spread through the classroom.
Kira stared at him with wide eyes.
The station's artificial gravity is set to 0.9 standard. You mean you are used to even more pressure? I guess I never really thought about it, Jake admitted. Everything here feels a little lighter, but I figured it was just because I'm in space. Professor Court walked toward Jake. Each step made the floor shake slightly. Would you participate in a demonstration, Mr. Martinez? Sure. The professor led Jake to a clear cylinder at the front of the class. This is a variable gravity chamber. Please step inside. Jake entered the chamber and Professor Court sealed the door. We will start at standard station gravity and slowly increase it. Tell us if you feel uncomfortable. The display showed 0.9 as the starting point. Jake felt fine. The number went up to 1.0 and he felt a small shift, like putting on a favorite jacket. Still fine. At 1.1, his classmates started looking worried. At 1.2, Dana called out, "Professor, this must be dangerous." But Jake just stood there, relaxed. "I feel totally normal," he said through the chamber's speaker. Professor Court increased the gravity more. At 1.5 standard units, Jake finally started to feel the strain. His movements became heavier, and he could feel extra weight on his bones and muscles, but he was not in pain. Extraordinary, the professor said quietly. Most species would be completely unable to move at this level. Some would suffer broken bones. Yet you remain functional. Jake bent down and touched his toes. Then he did a few jumping jacks. His classmates gasped. "How is this possible?" Kelvin asked. His golden skin was flushed with amazement. Humans evolved in high gravity, Professor Court explained as he lowered the chamber back to normal. This means your species developed very dense bones, powerful muscles, and strong hearts. You are built stronger than most sentient species in the galaxy. After Jake left the chamber, a student named Felix raised his paw. Does this mean humans are more physically capable in normal environments? Demonstrate if you would, Mr. Martinez, Professor Court said, pointing to exercise equipment. Jake walked to what looked like a weight bar. The display showed it was set to 50 standard units, which the professor said was a good lift for most species. Jake picked it up easily with one hand and curled it a few times. "This is pretty light," he said. Professor Court adjusted the weight to 100 units. Jake lifted it with some effort. The professor kept increasing the weight until Jake was lifting 300 standard units. According to the displays, this was enough to crush most species. On Earth, I was on the wrestling team, Jake explained as he set the weight down. I was not even the strongest guy. Our heavyweight champion could lift way more than me. The classroom erupted in excited talking. Kira's scales had shifted to bright purple. "You are saying there are humans even stronger than you?" "Oh yeah, tons of them. Professional athletes, bodybuilders, soldiers. I'm pretty average, actually." This seemed to disturb his classmates even more. The idea that Jake, who could do things impossible for most of them, was considered average among humans was almost too much to believe. During lunch, Jake found himself surrounded by students wanting to test his strength. He arm wrestled several challengers and won easily every time. He let Pip hang from his arm while he did pull-ups. He even gave Kelvin a piggyback ride around the cafeteria, which caused quite a scene. "I feel terrible that I treated you so carefully when we first met," Kelvin said, laughing as Jake set him down. "I thought you were fragile." "Everyone here keeps being so careful around me," Jake said. "I was starting to wonder if something was wrong. We were afraid we might accidentally hurt you," Kira admitted. "Deathworld species are supposed to be tough, but also vulnerable to things we take for granted. We did not know what might harm you. What could you possibly do to hurt me?" Jake asked. Denna floated closer. "Jake, most species here could be seriously injured by impacts that you would barely notice. Our bones are less dense, our muscles weaker. We assumed Earth's dangers came from your environment, not from your bodies adapting to overcome that environment." It was a strange thought. Jake had always considered himself normal, even a bit weak compared to some friends back home. But here, among species that evolved in easier conditions, he was apparently superhuman. That afternoon, Jake had his first physical education class. The gym was enormous with sections for various low-impact exercises. When Jake entered, he found about 20 students already there with Coach Ven. The coach was a lean alien with purple skin and 4 arms. "Welcome, students," Coach Ven said. His voice was musical. "Today we will begin with basic aerobic conditioning. Please go to the track for a light jog." The track circled the gym. Coach Ven led them in stretches, then started jogging at what he called a moderate pace. To Jake, it felt like a slow walk. He had to hold himself back to avoid passing everyone. After just 2 laps, several students were breathing hard. After 4 laps, most of them stopped with their hands on their knees trying to catch their breath. Coach Ven called for a rest period. Jake had barely broken a sweat. He jogged in place while others recovered, confused. "Are we doing sprints next?" he asked. Coach Ven's 4 eyes blinked in surprise. "That was the full cardiovascular workout for today, Mr. Martinez. Are you feeling well? You should have an elevated heart rate and be out of breath." "I feel fine. That was just a warm-up pace for me." The coach approached with a medical scanner and checked Jake's vital signs. His eyes widened as he read the results. "Your heart rate is barely elevated. Your oxygen efficiency is remarkable. How long could you maintain that pace?" Jake shrugged. "Back home, I would run 5 miles for morning practice. That would take me about 40 minutes at a comfortable pace." 5 miles? 40 minutes? Coach Ven looked at the track, then at his other students who were still recovering. "That would be over 50 laps. These students completed 8 laps and need rest." "Oh," Jake said, finally understanding. "So I'm like way more durable?" "It would appear so. Your cardiovascular system is extraordinarily efficient. Your muscle endurance is beyond anything I have seen." Coach Ven seemed excited now, his 4 arms moving animatedly. "Would you mind demonstrating your capabilities? I believe it would be educational for the other students." For the next hour, Jake performed various exercises while his classmates watched in amazement. He did hundreds of push-ups without stopping. He ran lap after lap around the track, slowly increasing his speed until he was sprinting at speeds that made his classmates nervous. He climbed a rope using only his arms multiple times. When he finally stopped, more to let Coach Ven's scanner rest than because he was tired. The gym was packed with students and teachers who had heard about the demonstration. They clapped, making various sounds that somehow blended together into something encouraging. Later that evening, back in his room, Jake got a message on his device. It was from Kelvin. "Jake, I hope you understand now why everyone was so cautious around you. We are not used to beings who possess such physical prowess. On most of our worlds, such strength would be unnecessary. But I want you to know we do not fear you. We are in awe. You represent something most of us have never encountered, proof that life can survive even in the harshest conditions. You are not just strong in body, but strong in spirit to come from such a world and remain so kind and humble. I am proud to call you my friend." Jake read the message twice. He felt warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with exercise. He had been so worried about fitting in, about representing. The 3rd week at Zenith Academy brought Jake's most challenging course yet. The class was called Survival Sciences. It was designed to teach students how to handle emergency situations in space or on different planets. The professor was Commander Zara Pike, a serious female with dark gray stone-like skin and eyes that glowed amber. "Survival is about understanding your limits and working within them," Commander Pike began. Her voice was sharp and clear. "Most of you come from worlds where survival skills have been obsolete for generations. Your ancestors conquered nature through technology. But technology fails. When it does, you must rely on knowledge and instinct." She showed holograms of hostile environments, a frozen wasteland, a hot desert, a toxic swamp, and an empty asteroid. "We will study each environment type and learn the protocols for survival. The key is recognizing that as living beings with specific needs, you must avoid exposure to lethal conditions." A student named Marcus raised his paw. "Commander, what defines a lethal condition?" "Anything outside your species' viable parameters. For most of you, this includes temperatures below freezing or above 40 degrees Celsius, unbreathable atmospheres, lack of fresh water for more than 2 days, or lack of food for more than a week." Jake shifted in his seat. "On Earth, people regularly experience temperatures well below freezing and above 40 degrees. Hikers went days without fresh water sources using filters. Survival experts could last weeks without food." Commander Pike noticed his movement. "Mr. Martinez, do you have a question?" "Not exactly a question, ma'am. Just thinking about how those parameters compare to Earth." The commander's glowing eyes fixed on him. Perhaps you would like to share your thoughts with the class. Jake stood up. He was getting used to being put on the spot now. Well, humans regularly experience temperatures outside that range. In some places on Earth, it gets down to -40 degrees in winter and up to 50 degrees in summer. People live in those places all year. The classroom stirred with uneasy sounds. Commander Pike remained neutral.
And your species has biological adaptations for such extremes?
Not really. We just wear appropriate clothing and build shelter. But people do stuff like ice fishing, where you sit outside in freezing weather for hours. Or they work in deserts. Kira's scales had turned pale blue, showing distress. Jake, -40 degrees? That is beyond lethal for most species. Your body fluids would freeze. Humans have survived much colder, Commander Pike said thoughtfully. She pulled up a data file. According to Earth's medical records, your species has survived external temperatures as low as -89 degrees Celsius and internal body temperatures as low as 13 degrees Celsius with full recovery. Yeah, there was this woman in Sweden who fell through ice, Jake said, remembering the story. She was clinically dead for hours in freezing water, but they warmed her up slowly and she survived with no brain damage. The cold preserved her. Preserved? Kelvin looked horrified. You speak of this as if it were positive. It was. She lived. Commander Pike studied Jake with new interest. What about heat tolerance? Well, people live in Death Valley, which is one of the hottest places on Earth. The record temperature there is around 57 degrees Celsius, and athletes compete in extreme conditions. There's this race called the Badwater Ultramarathon where people run 135 miles through the desert in July. They run? For what purpose? Denna asked. For fun. It's a challenge. The class fell silent. Finally, Marcus spoke, his voice small. Your species engages in life-threatening activities for entertainment? When you put it that way, it sounds kind of crazy, Jake admitted. But yeah, humans do extreme sports all the time. Mountain climbing, cave diving, skydiving. Some people climb huge cliffs without any safety equipment. Why would anyone do that? Kira asked. Her scales were cycling through colors Jake had never seen. I guess because it's there? To push themselves? To feel alive. Jake struggled to explain something that had always seemed normal. Humans like challenges. Commander Pike crossed her arms. Let us test these claims. We have environmental simulation chambers for survival training. Mr. Martinez, would you be willing to demonstrate your species' resilience? Sure. The commander led the class to a large facility. Inside were a dozen sealed chambers, each able to simulate different planetary conditions. She directed Jake to enter Chamber 1 while the rest of the class gathered around the observation window. We will start with a simple test. Low temperature environment. 10 degrees Celsius, Jake felt the air cool down. He was wearing his standard uniform. This is comfortable. Like spring weather back home. Commander Pike lowered the temperature to 5 degrees, then 0. Jake rubbed his arms but stayed calm. Getting chilly. I would want a jacket, but I'm fine for now. At -5, his classmates began protesting that he should be pulled out. At -10, Commander Pike herself looked concerned. But Jake, while cold, was not in danger. He did some jumping jacks to warm up, showing he could still move freely. Enough, Commander Pike said, raising the temperature back to normal. Remarkable. Most species would be experiencing hypothermia by now. Your body produces significant heat, and your mental resilience is noteworthy. When Jake left the chamber, Kelvin wrapped a thermal blanket around his shoulders despite Jake saying he was fine. You were shaking, Kelvin said. His golden skin was pale with worry. Yeah, but that's just shivering. It's how humans generate more heat when we're cold. It's automatic. The next test was high temperature. Commander Pike raised the chamber temperature to 35 degrees Celsius. Most of the class agreed this was uncomfortable but manageable. At 40 degrees, Jake started sweating, which fascinated everyone. Your body is secreting fluid, Denna observed. Her crystal form chimed with concern. It's sweat. Evaporative cooling. When the moisture evaporates off my skin, it takes heat with it. It's how humans regulate temperature. The temperature climbed to 45 degrees. Jake removed his uniform jacket and drank from a water bottle Commander Pike provided. He was uncomfortable but functional. At 50 degrees, he was miserable, but he could still move, think, and respond to questions. How are you not experiencing organ failure? Commander Pike demanded, checking her instruments. I'm not happy, but I'm not dying either. Plenty of people work in temperatures like this. You just need water and breaks. The final test came 3 days later in their next class. Commander Pike had designed a survival scenario. You will be placed in a simulated wilderness environment with limited supplies. Your goal is to survive for 48 hours. Most training scenarios for other species last only 6 hours with full supply access. She divided the class into teams of 4. Jake was grouped with Kelvin, Kira, and the quiet crystal alien Talon. They were given a basic emergency kit with a water purifier, an emergency beacon, thermal blankets, and basic first aid supplies. The simulation chamber looked like a forest, similar to environments on several safe worlds. The temperature was mild. There were streams for water and the plant life was non-toxic. For most teams, this was still a big challenge. Jake's team started well. He immediately began checking their situation, finding water sources and potential shelter locations. His teammates were smart but moved carefully, afraid of the unfamiliar environment. The trees make me nervous, Kelvin admitted. They are so large and could fall. These look healthy. They're not going to fall, Jake assured him. But we should build a shelter before it gets dark. Nights get cold. Using fallen branches and the thermal blankets, Jake built a basic lean-to shelter. His teammates watched in amazement as he efficiently created a windbreak and insulated floor using leaves and moss. How do you know how to do this? Kira asked. Boy Scouts. It's a youth organization on Earth where kids learn outdoor skills. We went camping a lot. You were trained in survival as a child? Talon's crystal structure pulsed with surprise. It was mostly for fun, but yeah, basic wilderness survival is something a lot of Earth kids learn. That night, temperatures dropped to near freezing. The other teams huddled in their emergency blankets trying to stay warm and waiting for morning. Jake's team stayed relatively warm in their shelter. He even started a small fire using the spark function on the emergency beacon, which shocked his teammates. You are creating combustion intentionally, Kelvin asked, staring at the flames with wide eyes. Fire is super useful. It provides heat, light, and you can purify water by boiling it. Humans have used fire for hundreds of thousands of years. It is so dangerous, Talon said, though they moved closer to the warmth. The next day, Jake found edible plants and caught fish in the stream using a makeshift spear he had made from a straight branch. His teammates were vegetarians or crystal-based life forms, so they did not eat the fish. But they were impressed by his resourcefulness. When the 48 hours ended and all teams were brought out, Jake's team was in the best condition by far. Other groups were exhausted, cold, and hungry despite having the same supplies. One team had activated their emergency beacon after only 12 hours, unable to cope with the darkness and isolation. In the debriefing, Commander Pike addressed the class. This exercise revealed an important truth about survival. It is not merely about having supplies or knowledge. It is about mindset. Most of you come. By his 4th week at Zenith Academy, Jake Martinez had become famous. Students from all classes wanted to talk to him and hear about Earth and its impossible conditions. He had been invited to speak at 3 different clubs and had even been interviewed for the Academy's news broadcast. But not everyone was comfortable with the human presence. The tension came during his interspecies ethics class. The teacher was Professor Hendrik Shaw, a tall, elegant alien with skin that glowed different colors. The class was discussing whether advanced civilizations should interfere with planets that had not yet developed space travel. That was when a student named Victor Cross spoke up. Victor was a Theron with dark red scales. I believe we should discuss the elephant in the room, he said. His tail moved sharply behind him. We have spent weeks hearing about how dangerous Earth is, how physically superior humans are, but we have not discussed whether a Deathworld species should have been invited into the galactic community so quickly. The classroom went silent. Jake felt everyone's eyes turn to him. He kept his face calm, waiting to see where this was going. Professor Shaw's skin patterns turned yellow, showing concern. That is a provocative statement, Mr. Cross. Would you care to explain? Certainly. Victor stood, speaking to the class rather than Jake directly. Earth has been part of the galactic community for only 15 years. In that time, humans have secured trade agreements, military partnerships, and educational opportunities like this academy. They have used their reputation as a tough species to gain advantages. That's not true, Jake said quietly. Humans earned those opportunities by contributing to shared knowledge and resources. Did you? Victor's scales darkened to almost black. Or did the Council grant them because they were afraid? Because a species that evolved to survive Deathworlds might be a threat if excluded. Mr. Cross, Professor Shaw warned, but Victor continued. Humans consume meat. They tolerate extreme conditions. They possess physical strength that could harm most species here. They come from a world of constant warfare and competition. I am not saying humans are evil. I am saying that perhaps we have been naive to welcome them without fully understanding the implications. Jake stood slowly, his hands tight at his sides. He forced himself to take a breath before speaking. You want to talk about Earth's history? Fine, yes, humans have fought wars. Yes, we have made mistakes. But we have also created art, music, literature, and philosophy. We have built civilizations, cured diseases, and explored our solar system before we ever met another species. And when we finally did meet you, we came in peace. Peace backed by the implicit threat of violence, Victor countered. You cannot deny that human history is soaked in blood. And what about your species? Jake shot back. The Therans were conquered by another species 3,000 years ago, right? Before you joined the galactic community? Did that make you too dangerous to include? Victor's scales flared red. That is ancient history. We have evolved beyond such barbarism, and so have humans. Earth has not had a global war in over 70 years. We have been working toward peace just like everyone else. Professor Shaw raised his hands. His skin pulsed orange for attention. Gentlemen, please. This discussion is becoming heated. Let us take a step back and examine the actual question. Should Deathworld species be evaluated differently when considering membership in the galactic community? Kelvin, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. With respect, Professor, I believe the question itself is flawed. We are not talking about Deathworld species as a category. We are talking about humans specifically. And from what I have observed, humans are no more dangerous than any other species. In fact, Jake has shown remarkable restraint and kindness despite his capabilities. Thank you, Kelvin, Jake said. However, Kelvin continued, and Jake's heart sank. I do think Victor raises a point worth considering. Not about threat, but about understanding. We have spent weeks learning about Earth's dangers, but we have not truly discussed what it means to come from such a world, what it does to one's psychology. What do you mean? Jake asked. Kelvin stood. His golden skin showed patterns of deep thought. Jake, you have told us about thunderstorms, earthquakes, predators, and temperature extremes. You have demonstrated physical abilities that seem superhuman to us, but you have never spoken about fear. Do humans not feel fear of these dangers? The question caught Jake off guard. Of course we feel fear. Everyone is afraid of something. But you said these dangers are normal, that you live with them daily. Right, because they are manageable. You learn to be careful. You take precautions, but you cannot live your whole life terrified of thunderstorms or earthquakes. They are just part of reality. Kira's scales shifted to thoughtful purple. I think I understand what Kelvin means. Jake, when you talk about Earth, you describe objectively lethal conditions with casual acceptance. It is almost as if you do not fully recognize the danger. I recognize it, Jake said, feeling defensive. I'm not stupid. No one is suggesting you are, Professor Shaw said. But consider this. If I told you I was going to place you in a chamber with toxic atmosphere, crushing gravity and acid rain, would you enter? Of course not. But Earth is classified as Class 12. More dangerous than the scenario I described. Yet you lived there for 18 years without considering it unusual. Do you see the disconnect? Jake sat down slowly, processing this. The classroom was silent, everyone waiting for his response. Finally, he spoke. I think the difference is context. Earth is dangerous compared to your worlds, sure. But for humans, it's home. We evolved there. We are adapted to it. It would be like me saying your homeworld is dangerous because the gravity is too low and would make my bones weak over time. But humans chose to come to the stars, Victor said. His scales were now neutral brown. His anger had faded, replaced by real curiosity. You left your adapted environment to join civilizations from gentler worlds. Why? Because we wanted to meet you, Jake said simply. Because we were lonely being the only intelligent species we knew about. Because the universe is vast and amazing, and we wanted to be part of it. Yeah, Earth is harsh, but that harshness taught us to value life, to cooperate, to overcome challenges together. Those same traits made us want to reach out to others. Denna floated forward. Her crystal body caught the light beautifully. I have been thinking about this question for weeks. Why are humans the way they are? I believe I have an answer. You are optimists. Optimists, Jake repeated. Yes, your world tried to kill your species at every turn. Starvation, predators, disease, disasters. By all logical analysis, humanity should have gone extinct thousands of years ago. But you did not. You kept trying, kept adapting, kept hoping that the next day would be better. Only a deeply optimistic species would look at a hostile universe and decide to explore it. Professor Shaw's skin patterns shifted to warm gold. That is a profound observation, Miss Denna. And it brings us to the heart of interspecies ethics. We fear what we do not understand. Victor's concerns, while perhaps expressed confrontationally, come from a place of uncertainty. Humans are different from most species in the community. But does different mean dangerous? No, Kelvin said firmly. I have spent considerable time with Jake. He is patient, kind, and curious. He uses his strength to help others, not to dominate them. These are not the traits of a dangerous individual. But I am one human, Jake said. Victor's question is not really about me. It's about whether humans as a species can coexist peacefully with the rest of the galaxy. And honestly, I do not know. I cannot speak for 8 billion people. None of us can speak for our entire species, Kira said. But we can speak to our experiences. I have learned more from Jake in 4 weeks than I learned in years of standard classes. He has challenged my assumptions about what is possible. Other students began adding their voices. Marcus talked about how Jake had helped him understand persistence. Talon spoke about learning to face discomfort during the survival exercise. Even students Jake had barely spoken to shared how his presence had made them think differently. Victor sat quietly through all of this. His scales slowly shifted from brown to pale blue. Finally, he stood again. I owe you an apology, Jake, and an explanation. My homeworld was invaded 3,000 years ago, as you mentioned. We were not warriors. We surrendered quickly to save lives. For generations, we were under their rule until the Galactic Council intervened. Since then, Therans have prided ourselves on being peaceful, civilized, beyond the brutality of our past. He paused, his tale still. When I learned about Earth, about humanity's violent history and physical prowess, it frightened me. I saw echoes of our conquerors. I thought perhaps the galaxy was making a mistake, allowing another predator species into our midst. But I was wrong. Our conquerors took us because they wanted power. Humans joined the community because they wanted connection. That is a crucial difference. Jake stood and held out his hand. Victor looked at it for a moment, then clasped it in a handshake that was clearly unfamiliar, but deeply meaningful. Thank you, Jake said. And I understand your concerns. If I came from a world that had been invaded, I would be cautious too. But I promise you, most humans just want to live in peace, learn about the universe, and maybe make some friends along. The final weeks of Jake Martinez's first semester at Zenith Academy passed quickly. What had started as a lonely journey from Earth had become something he never expected. He had found a place where he truly belonged, not despite being human, but because of it. The semester-end celebration was held in the Grand Observatory, a massive clear dome that offered views of the stars in all directions. Students from all classes mixed together, sharing food from their various homeworlds and discussing plans for the break period. Some would return home. Others, like Jake, would stay at the academy for continued studies. Jake stood near one of the viewing windows watching the stars when Professor Lyra Quinn approached. The professor's soft quills rustled with pleasure. Mr. Martinez, she said warmly, I wanted to thank you personally before the semester ended. Thank me? For what, Professor? For revolutionizing my curriculum, she said with a laugh. Before you arrived, my galactic biology course was rather dry. We discussed theoretical adaptations and standardized evolutionary patterns, but you showed my students that biology is far more diverse and surprising than our textbook suggested. Next semester, I am restructuring the entire course to include comparative Deathworld biology. That's great, Jake said, genuinely pleased. Though I hope you will include other Deathworld species too. Earth is not the only harsh world out there. Indeed not, but it is one of the few that produced a spacefaring civilization. Most very dangerous worlds either have no complex life or have species that never advance beyond basic tool use. Your ancestors were remarkably persistent. Stubborn, Jake corrected with a grin. The word you are looking for is stubborn. After Professor Quinn left, Kelvin and Kira found him. Kelvin carried what looked like a wrapped package, while Kira's scales were cycling through excited rainbow patterns. We have something for you, Kelvin said, presenting the package. A gift to commemorate your first semester. Jake carefully unwrapped it to find a beautiful holographic display unit. When he turned it on, an image appeared. It was a group photo of Jake and his friends, taken during a recent study session. but it was animated, showing them laughing, talking, and just being themselves. "This is amazing," Jake said. His voice was thick with emotion. "Thank you. Look at the base," Kira prompted. Her scales were now warm gold. He turned it over and found words carved in both English and Galactic Standard. To Jake, who taught us that strength comes in many forms, and friendship knows no world. "Guys, I might cry," Jake said, laughing to cover the fact that he actually might. "Humans produce water from their eyes when emotional," Kelvin observed. "Fascinating adaptation." "It's called crying, and yes, we do," Jake said, setting the gift down carefully. "This means everything to me. You know that, right? Before coming here, I was terrified I would not fit in, that I would be too different. But you all made me feel welcome." "You made yourself welcome," Kira corrected, "by being patient with our questions, sharing your experiences, and never making us feel inferior for coming from easier worlds." "Why would I do that?" "Your worlds are not easier, they are different." They were interrupted by Victor, who approached with unusual hesitation. His scales were neutral beige, showing nervousness. "Jake, might I speak with you?" "Privately?" They moved to a quieter section of the observatory. Victor seemed to struggle with what to say before finally speaking. "I wanted you to know that I am withdrawing my formal complaint." "Complaint?" "After our debate in ethics class, I filed an official concern with the Academy administration, questioning the decision to admit Deathworld students without additional safety protocols. I argued that the risk assessment had been insufficient." Victor's scales darkened with shame. "I was wrong. You are not a danger. If anything, your presence has enriched the Academy. I have spent the past weeks observing you, and I have seen only kindness and patience." "Victor, you do not have to apologize again. We already talked about this." "No, I do. Because it was not just about you. It was about my own fear and prejudice. I convinced myself I was being logical, protecting others, when really I was simply afraid of what I did not understand. That is not the kind of person I wish to be." Jake held out his hand again. "Then do not be. People can change." "I have seen you change over these past weeks. You have been asking questions, learning, growing. That is what matters." Victor clasped his hand firmly this time, without hesitation. "I hope to learn more from you next semester. Perhaps you could teach me some Earth survival skills?" "I would like that. And maybe you can teach me about Theron engineering. Those gravity systems are incredible." As the evening went on, Jake found himself surrounded by students wanting to share their thoughts about the semester. Marcus thanked him for inspiring a research project on high-gravity adaptations. Denna gave him a crystal sculpture she had created, showing a human figure standing strong against a storm. Even Professor Court, the massive rock-like teacher, stopped by to tell Jake he had been the most surprising student he had taught in decades. "You know what the real surprise was?" Professor Court said. His rocky features somehow showed warmth. "Not your strength or endurance. Those were expected from a Deathworld species. The surprise was your humility. You could have used your abilities to dominate, to establish hierarchy. Instead, you used them to help others. You never once made your classmates feel lesser." "They are not lesser," Jake said simply. "They are my friends." "Exactly," the professor rumbled. "That is what makes you remarkable." Later, Jake stepped outside the celebration onto a smaller observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly in all directions, alien patterns he had learned to recognize over the past months. He heard footsteps behind him and turned to find Commander Zara Pike. "Commander," he greeted her. "Enjoying the party?" "Observing it," she corrected, leaning against the railing beside him. Her stone-like features were softened by the starlight. "You caused quite a stir this semester, Cadet Martinez." "I did not mean to." "No, you did not. But impact is not measured by intention." She was quiet for a moment, then continued. "I have taught survival sciences for 23 years. In that time, I have seen thousands of students from hundreds of species. Most learn the protocols, pass the exams, and forget everything within a year. They will never need those skills because they will never face true danger." "That is probably a good thing," Jake said. "Perhaps, but it has also made them complacent. They do not understand what survival really means because they have never had to survive." She turned to look at him directly. "You changed that. When they saw you build shelter, find water, create fire, they understood for the first time that survival is not about following protocols. It is about adapting to circumstances with whatever resources you have available. I just did what anyone from Earth would do." No, Commander Pike said firmly. You did what most species never could do. And in doing so, you taught them something invaluable, that the universe is still wild and dangerous despite all our technology. She pulled out a small badge from her pocket. This is the Academy Survival Excellence Commendation. It has not been awarded in 6 years because no student has demonstrated true survival aptitude. I am awarding it to you. Jake took the badge, stunned. Commander, I do not know what to say. Say you will return next semester and continue teaching these soft, civilized students that comfort is not the same as capability. Yes, ma'am. I will. The next morning, Jake woke to find a message from his parents. They had received his last message and were bursting with pride. His father joked that Jake was now officially tougher than him. His mother said she had been showing his messages to her students, inspiring them to dream about the stars. There was also a message from his younger sister, Carmen. All my friends think it is so cool that my brother is in space with aliens. Can you send me pictures? Also, is it true you are stronger than all of them? That is what the news is saying. They are calling you Earth's ambassador. No pressure or anything. Jake laughed and recorded a response. Tell your friends the aliens are way cooler than me. They can do things I cannot even imagine. And I am not Earth's ambassador. I am just a student. But I am trying to represent humanity well. Maybe someday you will come up here too. That afternoon, Jake attended a special assembly in the Academy's main hall. Chancellor Nova, a being of pure energy contained in a crystal matrix, floated at the center of the stage. Students of Zenith Academy, the Chancellor's voice filled the hall. This has been a remarkable semester. We have seen unprecedented cross-species cooperation, academic innovation, and personal growth. Much of this has been catalyzed by the addition of our first human student. Jake felt hundreds of eyes turned toward him. He tried to sink into his seat, but Kelvin nudged him gently. Cadet Jake Martinez has challenged our assumptions about what is possible. He has demonstrated that beings from harsh environments bring unique perspectives and capabilities to our community. In recognition of his contributions, the Council has voted to expand our outreach program to include more students from dangerous worlds. We will be creating new support systems, specialized facilities, and curriculum adjustments to accommodate these students. The hall erupted in applause. Jake sat in shock. More Deathworld students. More beings who understood what it meant to come from hostile environments. When the new semester began, Jake Martinez waited at the shuttle bay for the arrival of 3 new students. The Academy had expanded its program to include more beings from dangerous worlds. Jake had been asked to help them adjust, just as Kelvin had helped him months ago. He remembered his own arrival, how overwhelming everything had seemed. The strange architecture, the unfamiliar faces, the feeling of being completely out of place. Now he stood here as a guide, ready to help others through that same experience. The shuttle doors opened and 3 students emerged. The first was a Corvin whose body looked like walking stone and minerals. The second was a Drexian, whose skin crackled with small electrical patterns. The third was a Saurian, who moved with the grace of a predator and had sharp eyes that took in everything. Welcome to Zenith Academy, Jake said, extending his hand to each of them. I am Jake Martinez from Earth. I know how strange everything must seem right now, but I promise it gets better. The Corvin, whose name was Granite, rumbled with laughter. You are the famous human. We heard about you, the Deathworld species that taught the soft ones what survival means. That is not exactly how I would put it, Jake said, slightly embarrassed. But yeah, I am from Earth. Class 12 Deathworld. The Drexian, called Storm, flickered with interest. Earth? We studied your world in preparation. Natural electrical discharges in the atmosphere, ground instability, apex predators. Impressive. It is home, Jake said with a shrug. But let me tell you something important. The students here might come from gentler worlds, but they are not weak. They are brilliant, kind, and willing to learn. Treat them with respect, and they will do the same for you. The Saurian, introduced as Hunter, focused sharp eyes on Jake. You defend them. Why? Because they are my friends, and because respect is not about physical strength. It is about recognizing that everyone has value, regardless of where they come from. As Jake showed the new students around campus, he realized how much he had changed since his own arrival. He was no longer the uncertain kid who had worried about fitting in. He had found his place, his purpose, his voice. That evening, he gathered with Kelvin, Kira, Victor, and the others at their usual spot in the observation lounge. The new Deathworld students joined them, initially wary but gradually relaxing as conversation flowed. Soon they were swapping stories about their respective homeworlds. "My world's storms generate lightning with enough power to turn stone to glass," Storm said, his electrical patterns dancing. "We evolved bioelectrical shielding to survive." "Impressive," Jake said. "On Earth we just avoid lightning. We are not quite that well adapted. Yet humans survived," Hunter observed, "without natural defenses." "How? Intelligence, tool use, cooperation, stubbornness," Jake grinned. "Mostly stubbornness." The laughter that followed was a mixture of different sounds. Crystal chimes from Denna, hissing clicks from the Therons, rumbling from Granite, and human chuckles from Jake. It should not have worked together, but somehow it created a harmony more beautiful than any individual sound. Over the next few weeks, Jake helped the new students adjust. He showed them where to find food that met their dietary needs. He introduced them to professors who were understanding about different learning styles. He mediated small conflicts that arose from cultural misunderstandings. But more than that, he helped them see that being from a dangerous world was not something to hide or be ashamed of. It was part of who they were, and it brought valuable perspectives to the Academy community. One afternoon, Jake was working in the library when Granite approached him. The Corvin's rocky exterior made him intimidating to many students, but Jake had learned to read the subtle shifts in his mineral structure that indicated emotion. "Martinez," Granite said quietly, "I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "For showing us how to be ourselves here. When I first arrived, I tried to make myself smaller, less noticeable. I was afraid my strength would frighten others. But watching you, I learned that strength is only frightening when it is used to dominate. When used to help, it becomes a gift." Jake smiled. "You figured that out faster than I did. It took me weeks to stop apologizing for being strong. Because you had no one to show you the way. You were the first. That must have been difficult." "It was," Jake admitted, "but it was also worth it. Because now students like you have an easier path." Word of Jake's role in helping the new Deathworld students spread through the Academy. Soon he was receiving requests from students planning to study on other dangerous worlds. They wanted advice on how to prepare, what to expect, how to stay safe while still experiencing the unique aspects of harsh environments. Jake found himself creating a series of basic survival guides, each tailored to different environment types. He worked with professors from various departments to ensure the information was accurate and useful. Commander Pike was particularly helpful, providing technical details and safety protocols. The guides became so popular that the Academy decided to make them part of the standard curriculum. Any student planning off-world travel would now receive basic survival training, regardless of their destination. One evening, Professor Shaw approached Jake after ethics class. "Mr. Martinez, I have a proposition for you. Next semester, I would like you to co-teach a seminar with me. Practical ethics in cross-species interaction. We would use your experiences as case studies for how to navigate cultural differences with respect and understanding." "You want me to teach?" Jake asked, surprised. "I want you to share your perspective. You have lived what most of my students only study in theory. You understand the challenges of being different, of facing prejudice, of building bridges despite obstacles. That is invaluable." Jake thought about Victor's initial hostility, about the fear in some students' eyes when they first met him, about the gradual building of trust and friendship. "I would be honored, Professor." As the semester progressed, Jake noticed changes in the Academy culture. Students from safe worlds were asking more questions about survival and adaptation. They were challenging themselves to step outside their comfort zones. Several started joining Jake for his voluntary wilderness training sessions in the simulation chambers. Kira was one of the most enthusiastic participants. Her species, the Therons, had evolved in paradise conditions, but she was determined to understand what life was like for species less fortunate. "I used to think my world was the norm," she told Jake during a training session, "that dangerous worlds were anomalies. But there are more Class 8 and above worlds in the galaxy than safe ones. We just do not hear about them because most do not develop spacefaring civilizations. Learning about survival has made me realize how lucky my species was and how much we take for granted. Every species has advantages and disadvantages," Jake said. "Therons might not be naturally tough, but you have incredible engineering minds. You built the gravity systems that make this station possible. That is its own kind of strength, perhaps. But I think there is value in understanding struggle, even if we do not face it ourselves. It builds empathy. Jake could not argue with that. Empathy was what had transformed his relationship with his classmates. Once they understood that Earth's dangers were not something humans chose but something they had to overcome, fear turned to respect. Once Jake understood that his classmates' caution came from genuine concern rather than weakness, frustration turned to patience. Near the end of the semester, Jake received a communication from Earth. It was from the Global Education Council. They wanted him to return home during the break to speak at schools about his experiences, to inspire other young humans to consider joining the galactic community, to show that humans could thrive among the stars. Jake was torn. Part of him missed Earth desperately. He missed the smell of rain, the feel of real gravity, the taste of food that had not been synthesized. But another part of him felt like his work at the academy was not finished. There were still bridges to build, friendships to nurture, misconceptions to correct. He discussed it with Kelvin one evening in their shared study room. "What would you do?" Jake asked. Kelvin considered carefully. "I think you should go. Not because your work here is done, but because it extends beyond this academy. There are billions of humans who do not understand the galactic community, just as there are trillions of galactic citizens who do not understand humans. You can be a bridge in both directions. That is a lot of responsibility. Yes, but you have shown you can handle it. You came here as one uncertain student. You are leaving as a leader, a teacher, a symbol of what cross-species cooperation can achieve." Jake made his decision. He would return to Earth for the break, speak at the schools, share his experiences, but he would come back to Zenith Academy. This place had become his second home, and these beings had become his family. On his last night before departure, Jake stood in the grand observatory with his friends. They had gathered to say goodbye, though it was only temporary. The stars spread out before them, countless points of light representing countless worlds. "When I first came here," Jake said, "I thought I was representing Earth, showing aliens what humans were like. But I realize now that I was not just representing Earth, I was representing the possibility of connection. The idea that beings from completely different worlds with completely different